Hey, what's up guys? Matt here with Merle Gaming. Today I'm going to talk about my updated industrial system. I've had to tweak it some to not go over the depth cap where things start to break or break down and stop working. So this is my new system. I've got it built here on a server. This has been this has been a 2-week server, and I've also got a custom build tutorial on that later. As you can see, it's got sweet peaks, but stay tuned. We're going to talk about industrial. I've got a little list. I'm going to try to stay on topic. I'm sorry, I have a tendency to be a little scattered when I talk about things. I just get excited and a lot of things come to mind. I have a very excitable brain, I guess you could say. But alright, so here's the list. We got the drop sorter. We're going to talk about the drop sorter. We got the furnaces, and we got a finder system, which I'll show a little bit. Finder system, which is mostly up here. Pink lines are the finder system. And we got a gear up station and an auto crafter. That's kind of the main things. Other things that I'm not including in this are like auto TC upkeep, but you can figure those out if you can figure out the finder, because it kind of ties into that anyway. Alright, well, let's get into it. I want to talk about the drop sorter first. It's kind of, if you know how to do auto electric furnaces, it is very similar to that, but you just branch off and sort things other than your ore, basically. Alright, so first of all, you need to place a drop point, per se. Let me find a wrench tool here. Let's talk about the drop sorter. This is basically what most people refer to as an auto sorter. So I'm going to explain it, maybe over explain it. These are the sorted boxes in these little loot rooms. There's 3 of them in this base, and they each have 4 boxes for sorters. So sorters at the time of this recording only have 12 categories max, so you can only sort max of 12 different things into a box. But with the upcoming update, by the time you're watching this, you might see that update. It's going to be 30 categories, so adapt as necessary. As usual, things do change a little bit here and there. Alright, this is the main box. Alright, this is kind of the centralized reprocessing box, appropriately skinned into reprocessing. Usually I have this as a drop box, but we're going to try to not go over the 32 max step limit. The way I used to do my systems, it was a big monolithic system that did everything. It's like an all-in-one, and it would kind of break down once everything was included because it was just too much. We basically use this box as a way to link systems together, as I'll explain as we go. So the drop sorter all starts with 1 adapter on a box. Alright, so that's where you want to start. You want to get an adapter on a box, and if you're running furnaces, for example, you just, starting out, usually you want to get your furnaces as the first thing automated. You just run it to a conveyor that goes to your furnaces, right? Well, if you want to split to multiple things, obviously you go to a splitter. So what we're seeing here is this line. I'll color it, I guess, green. You can do that by switching color and pressing R on the tap. You can do the same thing with wires. The more you know. NBC star logo effect here. This goes to a splitter and goes to a bunch of different sorters. So what you'll find, I'll just color these all green. Let's just look from left to right. This one here is going to this loot room. Let me grab a hammer. Hopefully there's one right here. Yeah, very nice. Okay, and hammer. It's kind of hard to get in these loot rooms because these barrels, but it is what it is. So you'll find that the green tube goes to that splitter back there, and then it branches off and goes to these 3 conveyors, or 4 conveyors, actually 4. You just can't see it because of the angle. And each one of those goes to a thing. So each one of these has a category of stuff, and you can see this one's a stone, this one's the frags, looking a little light, been spinning, and we got one for wood. This is kind of the resource cove, and this one here is I got it combined with multiple things. It's like gunpowder, charcoal, sulfur mainly, but also explosives. Ammo's got lumped in there too, explosives. In retrospect, I'm not going to do barrels like this in the future because it just makes these a pain. And it's the same thing with these other ones. Like, look at this next one. This one here goes to the next loot room, and this one's like guns and stuff. Guns and ammo, and boom. So this one's basically sorting our most used type of ammo. So we got one for ammo, we got one for high tier guns. And the categories, I will say, you can't really see it on these conveyors, unfortunately, but I rarely do the full category. Like, this is just the 12 guns I like the most, basically, on one of these conveyors. Because we don't want to, if you do like the weapons category, for example, it's going to bring in maces and swords and all kinds of crap, and you don't want that. So that's why you got to pick and choose. And we did the same thing with ammo. That's why you're not seeing random things like bow and arrows. I actually put 12 types of ammo. And this one is mostly armor. We don't really keep, I don't really sort armor anymore. I used to sort armor, but now I just take like 6 hazmats, a couple heavy plate sets, and metal face mask, metal chest plate, armored doors. And this also, I decided to put sewing kits and signs in here, and leather. Because it basically goes with the armor crafting, and it seemed to kind of fit here. But the organization of these boxes doesn't matter a lot, because this isn't how you access them normally. I'm only opening this to show you, and we'll get to that later with the Finder, little prequel there. And this one's meds and cloth, basically. So all these sorters, these 4, set up the same way, 2 splitters. You know, that thing going to 2 splitters to split to these. And we got one more over here, which I'll show you briefly if I can get it out of here. All right. And it's the same thing. Oh, we can actually get in this one. But here's what it looks like. We should probably take in like workbenches and stuff, but I don't really care that much at this point. I'm not going to modify it. But as you can see, I decided to put this stuff here too, because it's used for like ladders and whatnot. And let's see, this is our high qual barrel, and we've got the low grade diesel barrel, and this one is just a bunch of components that recycle for scrap well and are scrap. But you can see how the sorts are. Like, this just takes unlimited low grade, unlimited diesel. It's going to be pretty hard to fill a large box with that anyway. You can adjust as necessary for yours. High qual only. And you can see at times we put a max on these, because how much do you really want, you know? So you can adjust these to custom numbers, or if you leave this max blank, then it just brings in as many as possible. It'll just pack your box. You got to watch out for that, though. You don't always want to be packing your box. So sometimes you want to limit it. But like scrap, yeah, we'll take all the scrap always. So if you take unlimited always, just leave that blank. I will say, just as a one time, I got to say it, don't use buffer, don't use min. I know they do stuff, and I know it says they do stuff, but in my experience, it's never worked right. Max is the only thing that seems to actually work right. I mean, it might have changed now. I haven't really tested it in a while, but it doesn't seem necessary. There doesn't seem to be any reason to use those other ones, so just max only. Okay, so that's the main sorter. Let me grab a flashlight. But you'll also notice it doesn't go to the furnaces. Furnaces work a different way. This reprocessing box, the same adapter that is the sorter, also goes to this chain of vertical barrels. So there's adapters. You'll see them here, not the pink line ones. These are all chained together with adapters to basically all be drop boxes. So there's a whole chain of drop boxes. And you'll notice a few toxic boxes throughout this. They're basically just drop boxes. They're in the drop box chain. Yeah, they come from this chain of barrels. And that ends up in this reprocessing. But you'll notice there's no finder line on these. So these toxic boxes will not be included in the searches. So it's kind of the meta of the toxic boxes. For my wipe, I tell everybody, hey, these toxic boxes, you can't find the stuff in them. They're drop only. That could be changed, of course, but I don't want to mess with it. It's just a small box for convenience, for if you want to throw an AK back or something, you know. Basically treat your furnaces like another sorter. It just, you know, pushes ore to furnaces. So it goes to furnaces. Alright, but let's talk about that now. I decided to put it on its own adapter, and when you put it on a separate adapter, it kind of splits it to a separate system. I'm going to put this one as like red. There. And this, if you follow this line, it goes to the electric furnace here. And if you follow this chain, it does 3 electric furnaces. You can do as many as you want. 3 is sufficient for what we're doing this late in the wipe. you'll see that it ends up going to a refinery and to some other furnaces too. And these are basically here for charcoal making. And this is obviously for cooking crude, naturally. But you'll also notice that it ends up going to a combiner here, industrial combiner. If you look at this, it's actually this gray line here. I'll just go ahead and color it the red. There we go. This red line is coming from that electric furnace and combining in, I'll explain why in a second, and going into here. This yellow line going into the refinery, and then from the refinery, it just changed to these. Just in, out, in, out, and out. And then it ends up coming back and going to the reprocessing box. But before going to the reprocessing box, so this final line does come back to a conveyor. And this conveyor doesn't need anything on it. It basically works as kind of like a wall or a barrier to stop logic from the previous conveyor, you could say. Because this whole chain of things will move things. If you're daisy chaining, it's just going to kind of try to use everything in that daisy chain. But once it hits another conveyor in that daisy chain, it kind of stops the logic and switches it up, if that makes sense. And we want to do that because this ultimately ends up going back to this combiner here. And this combiner here goes back into the reprocessing box. And you might think, okay, back into the reprocessing box. Why? Because it's basically going to move anything in the output of these furnaces back into this box, and this box is a sort box. So it is then going to go to the sorter, so it links the two systems together, but they're two separate systems, so it doesn't affect the max depth of each system. It's going to put frags, charcoal, anything getting smelted, also low grade, back into here, and then it goes and sorts to the appropriate boxes. You might notice my main ore pusher, we'll call it a pusher, is set to exclude mode, and it excludes wood. That's so that if you're just depoting wood, it actually goes to the wood box, which is back here, right? Actually, it gets sorted to the wood box rather than going directly to the furnaces. And that is because we want to be able to toggle that on and off, basically. And the way we toggle that on and off is with this other one, with this other conveyor here, which is currently off. You see the red blinker. But basically, this is hooked to the wood box on another independent adapter. One of the adapters on that wood box is going to this conveyor. So it's basically pulling directly from the wood box. And you might have noticed earlier where this goes. It goes to the combiner right before the furnaces that all need the wood. So these wood requiring furnaces and refinery are actually kind of required to be second in the chain. So you want your electric furnaces first and then the wood burning ones second if you're doing this. There's no reason to be trying to push wood to the electric furnaces. So that's why once we hit this, we do a combiner and say, hey, we can push wood to these if we want to, basically. So that's the whole point of that. So basically what we do is we turn this on. Once it starts pushing wood, we hit this button, which hits an igniter, and boom, we're making charcoal. So yeah, you gotta wait a second for the wood to actually push before you hit the igniter. And if you're done burning wood and you want to save your wood, boom, you just turn this off. It will still continue to burn up what it's already got in there. Okay, but that's the furnaces in a nutshell. All right, now let's talk about another system called the Finder. The Finder's, if you're not even doing any of this other stuff, you can still do the Finder on its own. It's kind of its own independent system as well. And it's required to be that way. I used to include it within the drop sorter. It was like drop sorter, Finder all in one. But I ended up separating it out because of that limit depth problem. And you'll notice all these pink lines. And I've just chose that color to make it obvious. All these pink lines are a bunch of just chained together boxes. Like there's all these barrels. And the end of the chain goes to this combiner. And you'll see one here. This one goes down into our bunker, which has a bunch of boxes. And this one goes to these loot rooms, and these loot rooms are all chained together. Note that it's on a separate adapter. Alright, you gotta use boxes that can take multiple adapters if you're gonna do this. So, different adapter, different logic set. Just kind of remember that. So you'll see this pink chain. This one's going to be kind of hard to see, but yeah, there's a separate adapter on each of these, and they're all chained together. And you'll notice the pink line goes from one room to the next. They're all chained together. It's all one big chain of these loot rooms, another separate chain of these barrels, and another separate chain down here, and that's why they have to be combined together. Now, in theory, we could just not use this combiner and make it one super duper long chain, but this is fine, as long as you're not going over the limit. This all ends up going to conveyors, and these are like the finder conveyors. It's usually pretty obvious because they go to locked boxes, very specifically locked boxes. If they're not locked, a raider can just like keep pulling all your stuff up and get all your good stuff from one box. If they're locked, they gotta break the box and the finder system breaks. So always want these locked. I like to put one beneath the tier 3, a couple others scattered around, one or two lockers. Check out my video on the best locker automation setup. They can actually get better than this is, but this one's kind of a simplified version. And now on these, obviously this needs, if it's going to go to multiple conveyors, it's got to end up going to splitters. So you'll see this ends up going to a splitter somewhere, this splitter, and this splits out to another splitter, and then the conveyors as necessary. Just a few splits here. It could be nicer, but this is effectively our gear up station. So what you'll find is we have two small boxes here that basically pull some generic resources you're going to want for crafting things. You know, guns, ammo, doors, various things, all kind of ready to be crafted right here. So this is just generically up and available to you. You can sit in here and get anything you require. We got another box over here, something similar, just different things, a couple more slots we could fill. Now once you get 30 slots, you might need less of these finders, which is kind of cool. But yeah, just some various things that will be needed throughout the wipe to get going. Very quick, you just jump down here, you grab what you need, you craft what you need, and you get out of the base. And if it doesn't have it, if you're not finding what you need, you just add it. You just add it to it. This one over here we use is basically the, not so much resources, but just patchy things, like maybe you want to find a SAR or something, you just punch it in here. So this is, we got key cards, diving tanks, little hazmat, ladders, and this one's flexible, you know, you add and remove what you need. But keep in mind, I'll say this now, I guess, you always want to have at least one thing on these conveyors. Always one thing. And you never want to have these on exclude, always on any item. So, and you always want to set a max as well. Always set a max on these. It's very important to always set a max and always have at least one thing. So I will say, like this one, if we're not doing anything at all, I'll take off everything and just leave one hazmat, typically. In this one, basically just some gear up stuff. It goes to the bottom locker, which is this one here. So we got these two as actual loot slots to do whatever. This could be fleshed out to be like a huge loot up station, kind of like I do in that video, other video about the lockers. But we just didn't go that far. It just didn't seem necessary. We tend to just have a gun already and only need some meds and ammo or the finish outer kit, and that's about it, you know. So that's fine. Oh yeah, there's one more finder I always have hooked up in every base, and it's this one here. I'll talk about these others in a second. They're related to the auto crafting, but this one here is another finder one, and you'll see it's going up here because, well, what it's for is up here. This happens to be up here in this base. It goes to these little crates, and you can see what it does. Basically preps up the gunpowder right here. So you could set it to bring in anything you want to. You know, you could use it for berries or whatever and do the same thing. But you'll notice another special thing that should be mentioned because it's not obvious. So this is just set to find charcoal and sulfur, basically. It's always going to try to pull that. You'll notice it's daisy chained to 2 boxes. This is important. It goes to this one, and then it chains over to this one. And what that does, you notice it was 2K. It's going to fill 2K in each of the things it's chained to. So it's actually doing 4K. So keep that in mind. If you chain things together and put it on the finder, it's going to find it for each box. Okay, well, yeah, that is the finder. Now, I will say before moving on to the next section, in your base, you could just chain all your boxes and hook them to a finder and not even have an auto sorter and just dump stuff everywhere. And you'll be able to at least find it, so you still at least won't have to go digging through boxes because you just type it in a finder, right? All right, now the auto crafters. This is the last thing I'm going to talk about in this video, is the auto crafters. I do this differently every wipe, it seems like, but I'm kind of liking the meta I have here. This has been very convenient. Basically, you can put these industrial crafters, right, on your workbenches. You can do 2 per workbench, so I just got 2 here on the tier 3s. And they just pump out stuff for the blueprints. Of course, you got to go make these blueprints at a research station and waste an item into it or whatever, but that's the part of the cost. So you'll notice I have 4 things in here. And a little bit to know about this is it does try to prioritize left to right, and it basically crafts whatever it can craft based on the input. 90% of the time we're making meds and ammo here, and all I do is just go, hey, we're low on 5.56, grab some gunpowder, grab some frags, throw them in here. And it's going to make the only thing it can make with those resources based on these blueprints. That's 5.56 ammo. So it's on right now, it'll just start going. So it'll just craft all those. You don't need to sit in base waiting. And where does it go? Well, yeah, sure, I'll mention that. So both of these are set to go to that combiner up there, which is going to this conveyor, and this conveyor just moves anything. But it only looks at, of course, these output sections. It doesn't look at the input. That's just how it's designed. And where do you think this goes? Just take a guess. Back to the reprocessing box via this combiner, the same combiner that takes the furnace loot. Also takes in the industrial crafter loot. And it just throws it back in here, and this goes to the sorter, of course. And you can see it working right here. Never stuff this box, or the reprocessing thing will blank out. It'll stop working, so try to leave like at least a row empty. And the reason charcoal's filling up in here, you saw earlier, our charcoal box is packed full. So realistically, what I do at this point, if I were still playing, is I just put the gunpowder on autocraft. It takes a little more charcoal than from the mixing bench, but who cares right now? We have way too much charcoal. It doesn't matter. You'll notice a couple conveyors here. This is when we want to put it on full auto. Like, just being able to dump resources in here and let it do its thing is super convenient. But if we want to, like, AFK, full AFK, make rockets and gunpowder and stuff, basically we set it up on these. Like, this is set for meds right there. But usually I'll go, like, I don't know. Let's say we're making rocket. You got to look at the blueprint, remember what it takes. Of course, I have it memorized because I've done it 9 times. A rocket takes 2 pipes, gunpowder, 150 gunpowder, and 10 explosives. So you could set this, turn it on, that's the one going to this one, and it's going to move this to the input. And you got to make sure, of course, you have the rocket blueprint in here. But based on the resources moving in here, rocket's the only valid thing it could make. So it's going to make a rocket. And this is how you put the rockets on autocraft. Now you need to be crafting gunpowder and explosives and have metal pipes, of course. Explosives I usually put on this one. And there's the explosive stuff. So if you turn this on and turn this on, it's also going to start cranking out explosives. So it'll be cranking out rockets and explosives. And if you have somewhere else set up this gunpowder blueprint, and it also going back into the drop box, you can basically full auto rockets that way. But as you can see, it's already cranking out rockets and doing its thing. It made a few, and then now it's waiting on explosives. But as this makes explosives, and those get sorted, and you know, these auto crafters, they basically work off the finder. You know, this is the finder line that they're going to, so they're just pulling stuff just like the finder. So understanding the finder actually ties in well to get you to all the other systems, basically. So sometimes I have multiple workbenches set up, like I'll have a tier 2 and I'll split off some of this stuff to tier 2 and kind of set up another little system like this. But this wipe, I've just decided to do it all here and kind of modify it as needed. But a lot of people have meds on AutoCraft, or even if you don't have all this set up and you just find an industrial crafter somewhere, you can still just pop it on, wire power to it, and like dump the resources in for one of these and just let it crank out meds. Like getting a med one up ASAP in your wipe is super handy, because you can just basically, you know, let these slots fill up with meds, and as you take them out, it'll make more as long as it's got input. So you won't have to sit in base ever making meds. You'll just dump the med making loot. So I'm trying not to be too scattered with this, but it's a lot to explain. It's a lot of info. I'm trying not to leave anything out. One thing I'm not talking about here is power. So keep that in mind. Some things have pass-throughs, some don't. So, like, obviously all the conveyors have pass-throughs, but these don't. So you either got to end your chain with one of these or split off 1 watt. It's always weird to split off 1 watt. With the new power update, it's still only going to use 1 power. So, I also have this set up to a backup battery too. So it's a little bit more elaborate than it needs to be, but basically it's just power on this. And it goes off of actually a big battery, but if for some reason that big battery fails, it goes to this one, which is like a backup battery for this whole system here. And that's being like charged by a solar panel. It was originally just that, but the solar panels got shaky and it wasn't always powered, so I decided to take its original power and use it as backup. And that's a whole nother thing though. Alright, well I think that's it. I feel like I'm forgetting something. These systems can be expanded anywhere in your base. I kind of isolated it to just a few areas, because otherwise the base just gets too chaotic in my experience, and one thing and the chain breaks and it breaks everywhere, and it's like, it becomes a mess to repair if you get raided, I've noticed, unless you kind of have it all in one area and know what it's doing. Like for example, I could run stuff to our lockers and autofill our lockers and stuff like that, but I chose not to do that because it would basically just get too complicated and become a real headache to maintain should things go awry. So that's just something I've learned over time, is to, you know, how to kind of manage it in a way that is easy to maintain. I'm kind of droning on with just extra bonus things. Let me know if you guys have questions. I love this stuff. I really also want to make a tutorial and on this base. This base, I love this base, my own custom design. It's basically a 3x1 core type thing, but it has a lot of tricks, a lot of peaks. I don't know about these peaks actually in this particular floor. I might change how this floor is. But the main part of it is actually the top, you know, the footprint and this top section. What's all in the middle can be changed as needed. But this top part here with these particular roofs and these particular peaks in the shell are the main thing about the base. So look forward to that. I'll give you guys a rundown of how to do it. I need a name for this base. Obviously it's going to change some as I go, but this is probably going to be my go-to shell for a giant team base. It's a lovely shell for defending raids. I wish we got raided more. We've only had one raid, and man, this peak came in handy. And having these bedrooms up here, but more on that later. Alright, see you guys next time. Peace out. I'm going to at least go up here and have a quick look-see from the top so you can see the beauty.